Welcome to another edition of Neighborhood Update with State Representative John Perzel. I'm Tracy Toth, and today we're discussing public school education in Philadelphia and the new Lincoln High School. John, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Tracy.
John, there's a lot of good news coming out of the Philadelphia School District right now. Let's start with this question. Why did the state move in 2001 to take over the Philadelphia School District?
Well, Tracy, back in 1995, 96, 97, every time you turned on the TV or read a newspaper in the city of Philadelphia, they constantly said that they were going to close the schools down and give them to the state, close them down and give them to the state. After a while, you have to believe that they're ultimately going to do something like that. Because if you're stuck in a position where you're just they're thrown at you, you don't know what to do. So we prepared. We said to ourselves, if we're going to take them, what changes would we like to see? What models would we like to use to say we're going to make sure that it works if we have to take these schools over? Already, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was paying roughly 60% of the cost of each student that went to school. And if we were going to pick up an additional burden of the cost, then we ought to have a little bit more say in exactly what's going on in the schools. The SRC came in and we gave them basically a toolbox of things that they could do. We said that they could bring in outside schools, they could bring in different types of educational outfits that were around the country.
Now, I would imagine a way to measure the success of the SRC is just to take a look at the test scores.
Yes.
Right? The PSSA test scores, the Terra Nova test scores. What have they shown you? Has it been good news?
Yeah, well, when you look at just math, we went from 19% to 41. That's an increase of double, and 41 is nothing to say we're done or we're finished. Obviously, you got to get up into the 80s.
But a marked improvement.
But a doubling in 5 years, just in the math scores by themselves, I think is an important gauge of what's going on with our kids in the schools all around Philadelphia. The reading scores are also up. They're not quite double, but they're up. They went from 29 to 38% of the kids being proficient in reading. So with math going up as high as it did, with reading headed in the right direction, and again, it's 5 years of scores going up in a row.
Right.
The previous 50 years, they couldn't show you 2 years in a row where the scores went up. So is it where we'd really like it to be? It's headed in the direction we want it to head, but it's not where we want to be yet. Sure.
Okay, well, getting back to those 5 years you just spoke of, what about the students' graduation rates?
The graduation rate has gone up about 4% higher than it was just 5 years ago. What's significant is the number of kids, and there's programs that we put into place that are coming out of prison. I mean, I don't think the average person thinks about kids coming out of prison going back to Philadelphia Public Schools, but it's about 1,000 kids a year. And of that group, the graduation rate went from 6% to in the 60s, 62, 63% of those kids are now graduating. High enough yet? No. But a tenfold increase from what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. And following up with graduation, a lot of colleges really look toward those AP scores. Yes. And those AP grades. What sort of courses are offered at Philadelphia schools as far as the AP courses go?
The advanced placement courses, there were 18 schools in 2002 when we took the schools over, and right now there are 48 schools that provide the advanced placement. So I think that just looking at that, by any measure that we look at, we have gone forward with. So 18 to 48 is, I think, very, very good. And when the colleges look at that now we now compare with a lot of the other schools in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Now, speaking of high schools, the actual number of high schools has increased from 38 to 62 since
Yes.
2002. What does this mean as far as class size and quality of education go? Because a lot of people are concerned with the quality of the education.
Well, what it did, it added more community schools, okay, which means the kids in the community are going to the schools in the community. It allowed for a little bit smaller class sizes, which also always does a better job when you have the smaller classes for the kids that are in the classes, and a better graduation rate, which I think you can see in the numbers that we mentioned just a little bit earlier. So we're getting smaller class size, we're getting smaller schools, we're getting better educated kids, and more of them are going on to college.
You were a strong advocate for charter schools in 2001 and 2002. How many charter schools are there, and why were you such a proponent of them?
The charter school movement was really another opportunity to give a little bit of competition in the schools. I think that when you look at America and you look at what we've accomplished, it's all because of competition. Coca-Cola and Pepsi. You know, I mean, you just look at all the different analogies like that. When the charter schools came in, they started to provide competition for the public schools. And the public schools had to get better because they were going to lose their students now. And the only thing that they really had when you have a school is your students. So there are approximately 55 charter schools now. as opposed to, what was it, 23, 24 back in 2002. So I think that the charter schools have really come along. They've provided the competition. They're providing people with choices.
Well, John, let's talk for a minute about school safety and school security. There was a problem with safety for students and teachers at Philadelphia schools when the state took over.
When you have a system with 200,000 kids in it, you're going to have obviously some problems with crime and with different things that go on. And the community education partners set up under Act 88, we said kids can't come back from prison and go right back to the schools. Number one, we wanted to make sure they got their GED, if possible, in prison, because the number one thing that keeps people in prison is the fact that they don't have a high school education. And number two, when they came back, we wanted them back at grade level. We didn't want a kid that's 17 in a 9th grade class with kids that are 13, 14 years of age. So we were able to accomplish that. So I believe, and the statistics bear out the fact that the crime rates are down, and now because we don't have to put those kids right back where they were before, and more of them now are graduating before or getting a GED before they get out of prison.
John, you've talked a long time about the importance of parental and family involvement in schools. Now, according to my notes, in 2002, there were less than 100 home and school associations, and today there are 214 home and school associations, which represent almost 80% of Philadelphia schools. What does this mean in your mind as far as the strength of the schools?
The number one indicator whether a child will get ahead or not when they first start school is parental involvement. The more involved the parents are, the more involved the child will be in school. And the worst thing you can have is a situation where you send a kid home from school and they put the child in front of the TV set and all they're doing is watching TV. The best thing is that you read a book to your child, you make sure they're doing their homework, make sure that you're active in what they're doing at school. So those home and school associations are a reflection of the fact that people are spending a little more time with their kids, they're making sure their children are doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. If they're doing that when they come to school prepared, that helps the grades go up. And again, I mean, the doubling of the math scores, it shows somebody's doing something somewhere to help the kids when they're at home. Right. And doing better at school because they're helping them at home.
Right.
And that's parental involvement. That's school and home and school associations. That's what it's all about.
Now, finally, John, there's going to be a new Lincoln High School soon, and that's great news for Mayfair. Tell us about the new building and the new academics program there.
Right now, when I went to school at Abraham Lincoln High School, there were 5,000 kids there. Today, there's somewhere over 2,000, and the whole goal was to get it down to around 1,200. I think the number is 12 to 1,500 is what they're saying they're going to be at the school now. Truthfully, they've moved the school back. They're going to have the ball fields in the front. The academics it's going to be more of an academic high school with some technology classes involved in it. And it's going to be generally, as I said earlier about all the high schools, they're going to be community kids going to the high schools, and it'll be much better for the community that it is a community high school. I mean, every kid in the city should be able to go to a high school in his neighborhood. Everywhere else in the state of Pennsylvania, you can go to a high school close to your neighborhood. And right now, that's not true. But when this school is complete, that is the goal, that was the objective, and we've achieved that.
John, thanks. I'm Tracy Toth. Thanks again for joining us for this edition of Neighborhood Update with State Representative John Perzel.